Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Shafiu Suleiman. Thank you for joining us. President Bola Tinubu administration has again takes another bold step to reform the nation's civil service and reduce the cost of governance by ordering implementation of the 800-page 2012 Steve Orosanye report on the rationalization and restructuring of the federal government parastatals, commissions and agencies. The decision to implement the report, which was somewhat avoided by the immediate past administrations of late Umar Yar'Adua struck Goodluck Jonathan, who sets up the committee, and that of President Muhammadu Buhari, is coming on the heels of nationwide protests against yet another far-reaching decision to end fuel subsidy and float the nation's currency, the naira. Though the oronsaye report recommended the scrapping and merging of 220 out of the then existing 541 government agencies, the Federal Executive Council under President Tinubu only okayed the reductions of 263 MDAs to 161, and merging or scrapping of several other agencies. It is against this backdrop we will be engaging a renowned public policy analyst, Professor Orosanye, on imperatives and challenges of implementing the Orosanye report. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
And now, before we commence the conversation, here are some tidbits. The Nigeria Labour Congress and other members of the organized labor unions have Tuesday commenced 2 days protest in Abuja over the high cost of living inflation, insecurity and hardship in the country. The protest started from the NLC headquarters in Abuja at 9:30 a.m. and terminated at the premises of the National Assembly, Abuja. Now, unions taking part in the protest include the Medical and Health Workers Union of Nigeria, the National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives, the Nigeria Union of Teachers, Construction Workers Union, among several others. Here is the report.
These were the chants which rented the air of the National Assembly premises as Nigerians in company of the leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress picketed the Federal Parliament to register the concerns of millions of Nigerians currently facing hardship due to the economic situation in the country. NLC President Joe Ajaero, who submitted the letter containing the demands of the organized labor unions to the National Assembly leadership, decried the dire situation being faced by the average Nigerian citizen, a situation he says the NLC can no longer stomach.
There is problem in the land. People are dying of hunger. People are dying of banditry. Insecurity is everywhere. Kidnapping is everywhere. You kidnap a poor man, you ask for millions. Where is he going to get the millions? The federal government should announce immediate measures to stop hunger. The Nigerian Labour Congress National Executive Council will meet this evening to review this situation. Having made this statement and taken it to the representative of the people all over the country, we have to meet this night to decide the next line of action.
Receiving the letter on behalf of the Senate President, the chairman of the Senate Committee on Labour, Employment and Productivity, Senator Dickett Plank, assured Labour that all of their demands have been noted and they should look out for positive changes within the shortest possible time.
Later on, negotiation will go on about the minimum wage. Resolution will be met. We are sensitive. Our leadership are restless to ensure that we mitigate the issue of hunger, the issue of unemployment, and the issue of insecurity. But all of us must be on the same page. It's my duty, it's your duty. We must all agree and work towards making sure that Nigerians are safe, Nigerians are not hungry, and Nigerians are secured.
Deji Adeonju, a prominent right activist who also spoke with the media, described the protest as a means of bringing the president up to speed with the true situation of the country. He called for swift government intervention to prevent the situation from escalating beyond control.
Sincerely hungry did the country, and government at all levels, whether state government, local government, federal government must cut costs. If care is not taken, the poor man we have no other option but to eat the rich in this country.
Yes.
You know, these people that are living here, that are feeling safe, this place, one day, if they don't make drastic changes about this country, one day this place will not be safe enough for them to even sit and deliberate.
Meanwhile, another set of protesters were seen within the vicinity of the National Assembly. They demanded that President Tinubu be given time to address the issues raised by the organized labor.
We are with the people, we are with President Bola Tinubu, we are fully in support of the policies and programs so far implemented by the government. Let's give the government at least 2 years. Let's see the impact of these policies. If these policies are not positively impacting on the masses of our country, then we will collaborate with TUC, NANS, Youth Council and every civil society organization to come out at the forefront to protest against the government.
Hungry Day. This seems to be the slogan of these protesters who have now approached the National Assembly to drive home their demands. First of all, it's insecurity. It's the cost of living in Nigeria. It's the cost of food items, the food insecurity, as well as insecurity on the roads. The cost of transportation, among other commodities in the country. This is what these Nigerians are talking about today. The NLC president had assured Nigerians that the NLC remains steadfast to ensure that all of the clamors of these Nigerians are addressed. While delivering a letter to the chairman of the Senate Committee of Labor and Employment, the NLC president said that the National Working Committee of the NLC will be meeting later in the day to decide whether this protest would turn to a full-blown industrial action where we would see the NLC and other members of the union down their tools, all in protest to the state of the nation and the state of the economy. From the National Assembly in Abuja, Sagir Ibrahim, reporting for Trust TV.
And in another development, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has commenced sale of dollars to Bureau de Change, BDC. Announcing the development in a statement on Tuesday, the Apex Bank said $20,000 will be available to each eligible Bureau de Change operator across the country. The sum, according to the Apex Bank, is to be sold to each BDC at the rate of 1,301 to $1, representing the lower band rate of executed spot transactions at the Nigerian Autonomous Foreign Exchange Market, NAFEM, as of the previous trading date. Dr. Hassan Mahmoud, CBN's Director of Trade and Exchange Department, signed the statement. Mahmoud said all BDCs are allowed to sell to end users at a margin not more than 1% above the purchase rate from CBN. Now, before we commence our conversation, we'll take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly. Thank you very much for staying with us on Daily Politics. And just as announced earlier, we have in the studio Professor Hussein Tukur. He is a public policy analyst. Together, we'll be looking at the pros and cons of implementing the Orosanye report. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Now before we start, let's look at this tidbits. First, we're talking about the nationwide protest by the NLC. Currently, taking place across the country. And we've had, the message delivered by the NLC president. What's your take on these demonstrations that are becoming a symbol of our democracy today?
Yes, well, demonstration or protestation that is peaceful, organized by groups or individuals are part of the democratic process. The Constitution allows it, and it's a fundamental right of every citizen to do so. I believe at this very moment, when the cries are louder about hunger, about insecurity, and other forms of banditry, it is very important that the various segments of the society have a voice. And this, I believe, have been represented by NLC and some other allied organizations. And it is an indication that such position is putting government on its toes, and that there is a need for government to act quickly to douse tension and to provide solution to some of the problems, which are of immediate need for immediate solutions.
Right. Just like the labor leaders have said, there's need for immediate solutions to this problem.
Definitely.
But then, before the commencement of the strike, we've seen levels of efforts by the government to thwart these demonstrations. There was a last-minute meeting with the labor movement and all of that, even though it didn't see the light of the day, or rather it ended deadlock. Now we are with the protests. But would they change anything? Because we've been seeing some of these protests even before now, at the point of the removal of the subsidy and so on. There was a similar protest taken to the National Assembly. There were also promises made which were not implemented, and here we are with another round of complaints, if you like, to the National Assembly. Would it change anything?
It will. One, because people have to express themselves. Expressing people's views clearly indicate that people still have confidence in those who can provide solutions.
Okay.
So especially
the lawmakers.
Yes, not only the lawmakers, including the executive,
policymakers, right?
Policymakers, because once people decide that they do not have confidence in the system, in the people and their leaders, the protestation will go violent.
Right.
And when such thing occur, then definitely it will not only affect the economy, but all facets of the nation.
Right.
So it is good that there was communication between the two, so that the protest should not go violent. It should be within the limit of the law, and that people's view, groups' aspiration, group thinking should be addressed.
Okay, before we take the next tidbit, do you see the government, taking steps to address the problem, especially looking at the public outcry, the recommendations by experts across, board? Everyone is hands on deck, trying to propose solutions. Do you see the government taking some of this advice?
Yes, I see the government taking the advice because the government is seriously concerned about it.
Right.
But one major issue that everyone should realize is that there are no immediate solution to some of the major problems.
Okay.
One, insecurity cannot be overnight.
Addressed.
Yes. Secondly, the problem of hunger is very clear. Take, for instance, the time in which government made pronouncement to release about 142 metric tons of assorted grains.
42,000. Okay,
42,
the latest one.
Yes. Then when you look at the time lag and at the fact that even in various states, none of the state government has received any
of such supplies.
Such supplies. The pattern of distribution is not clear. Who will receive, when will they receive is not clear. It's also an indication that the government is too slow in that regard.
Okay.
And if you look also at other policy pronouncements made immediately after the removal of oil subsidy, you find that those policies were said to, most of them, to materialize probably in March.
Yes, sir.
At today, we do not see in the horizon some of the solution coming directly to the public, and therefore this raises fundamental issues. One, doubt as whether the policy will be implemented, doubt whether the situation will change, and so on and so forth. And that's why I emphasize that government is very, very slow in this regard. But I would also like to emphasize that not only the federal government takes the responsibility of bringing succor to the people, but all other tiers of government, especially state government, can do so. We have seen responses in some states like Kano, like Niger State, and like some other states. That is the proactiveness that is required for all the 812 governments that exist in the federation. It should not be seen that only the federal government is responsible for addressing this, all other government, and there should be a concerted effort in this regard, which we do not see at the moment. That governments at various levels are working at cross purposes. Therefore, there is need for an urgent action that include all tiers of government in collaboration and in conjunction in order to address the problem. And that will make the various segments of the society to realize the importance of those governments, and they need to be patient in handling the matters.
Okay, again, in what looks like a reversal again, looking at the forex reform, that has been taking place. The federal government, the MPC, that is the monetary policy, of the CBN, now came up with a decision today to resume sales of forex, if you like, to bureau de change, who hitherto were seen as also part of the problem. Just last week, a number of them were chased, and arrested by the EFCC and so on. And here we are with the government coming up with a window to provide 20,000 at least each to a bureau de change operator who wants to access this forex. How are you looking at this? Some would say, just like other things, like the subsidy removal and so on, how it also was shrouded in a lot of controversy, that it has been returned halfway and so on. Here we are with another reversal.
Well, the reversal is an unfortunate situation in the sense that nobody will tell you exactly where such forests go. Is it the public, various individuals that requires it to perform certain businesses, imports, spare parts, and the rest? Where does the money go? That is the problem. And if you continue to supply such money and it ends up with corrupt politicians, that means the problem will not be resolved. And that is the accusation for most bureau de change in the past, yesterday, and even today. So such a problem has not been addressed.
Okay.
And therefore, if it's not squarely addressed, then we are back to square one.
Right. Okay, looking at some sort of pegging now of the rates at which this forex is given. The government, the central bank is talking about 1,301 to $1.
Yes.
Perhaps we've seen some level of recovery on the part of the naira in recent times. And 2-3 days ago, we've seen some level of recovery. What will this make in terms of, stabilizing, or rather, stabilizing the situation?
It's a matter of demand and supply. Who demands the dollar? For what purpose? And who are those who demand for investment in the productive sector? Now, if the demand is fueled by corruption, then definitely there will be no way out. If the demand is fueled by production, spare part, investment, and so on,
healthcare and all
definitely
of that.
It will be retained. It will definitely stabilize the naira, and therefore the economy will gradually over time also stabilize. But that's not the situation. That's not the situation.
Does this mean perhaps tinkering with the initial arrangement, or initial stance of the Tinubu government, floating the currency to allow it finds its value? If there is some sort of pegging now as in the rate?
No currency is allowed to float and succeed. That is a fact in history.
Right.
You must have regulations. Regulations does not mean direct interference in all matters.
Yes, right.
And that is what is missing. And that if the naira, the demand for dollar is not driven by speculation and corruption, then by the last 6 to 8 months, definitely the demand will have stabilized, the naira will have stabilized, productivity will have increased. But it is not. Take, for instance, the removal of oil subsidy. We now see state governments getting billions of naira.
Part of the savings.
Yes. And that means you are plugging out money from the circulation, and then you are putting back more than what you plug from circulation. And that means you are not addressing inflation, you are not also addressing the demand for foreign currency, but you are also jumbling matter, and therefore it will become a jungle of confusion. Here, in one hand, you are saying there is much naira in circulation, we are withdrawing, and here you are giving state government
pumping in more.
Yes, pumping in more. Those state government, we do not see clearly What are their priorities? What do they do with the money?
That's right.
It's not clear.
In some cases, they are even directly involved in the situation we are finding.
Definitely.
Because I've heard in one of the states, even though it was not mentioned, that a governor was converting $2 million monthly, part of the federal allocation now, changing it into dollar, and then to hold it so that you can make money out of it.
Definitely, there are allegations. We have not been confirming there, not today, not in the previous government, that even some of the governors, some of the politicians had bureau de change. You may ask yourself, for what purpose do they have bureau de change?
That's right.
You may ask yourself, how much money is said to be in circulation? How much is being hoarded? These are clearly indication that those money that are in the bureau de change are not sold to those who need it for the purpose of production, but for those who need it for the purpose of hoarding.
So if I understand, we will not see any significant change going forward.
Definitely, if the situation, if the issues are not addressed in terms of demand, the purpose, and where the money goes, and what are the indicators that it is going to the productive sector, then definitely we may not expect definitely a stability in terms of
the currency. Right. Okay, let's move into our discussion proper, looking at the Orosanye report. This is a committee that was set up by the then late Eradua, 2012 thereabout, and then carried on by his successor, President Goodluck Jonathan, and so on. But surprisingly, this report or implementation of this report did not see the light of the day, even by those who set up the committee. And the the successive administration also, or President Muhammadu Buhari, could not summon the courage to implement, even though at some point it came up with a white paper. Now, President Bola Tinubu, again in his usual manner or characteristics of taking bold steps, has decided to implement this. What's your initial thought when you hear him talking about, directing that it should be implemented?
Well, my first initial thought was that every strategy mechanism has been put in place for the implementation.
Okay.
Why I say so is that there is a lag of about 12 years before the policy is to be implemented. Secondly, there was a white paper. The first white paper that was not only brought out, but also approved for implementation.
Yes.
Secondly, during the past administration, that's Buhari's administration, there were two committees that were able to, first of all, look at the white paper again, and a committee that will also look at some aspects of the increase in the number of parastatals being established by the Act of the National Assembly. So I should have expected that this very government will have reviewed the first white paper, the second white paper, and the committee on the parastatals.
Before jumping into it.
Yes, and therefore, what I should have expected with a pronouncement is that there is implementation mechanism which will ensure step-by-step approach in ensuring that the aspect accepted by the government is implemented. But I understand also that the committee...
There was a committee, that's right.
Yes, was given 12 weeks to implement. So I should raise some fundamental questions which, if they are addressed, definitely the implementation.
Okay.
Now, in the parastatal, I understand there are those which were recommended for scrapping or merger, which are of constitutional provision.
That's right.
Like the revenue mobilization
allocation, and
the public complaints commission. These are constitutional matters.
That's right.
They are there. You cannot do anything about them until you amend the constitution.
You have to tinker with the constitution.
Yes, I believe within 12 weeks, the Nigerian constitution may not be amended to accommodate this one.
That's right.
One, the process of constitutional amendment is so rigorous.
Very rigorous.
The state houses of assembly are
24, two-thirds of them.
Two-thirds. I don't think such can be. And more so, if you are to merge two organizations, you have to look at the structure of the organization and see how they could be restructured, rationalized in terms of functions, in terms of performance, in terms of responsibility, also in terms of resource allocation.
That's right.
This, I believe, might have been done, and if it might have been done, so it can be easy. Secondly, if you look at the personnel of all the organization, about 200, and then you do a job analysis in terms of number of directors, number of other personnel cadre, and then you look at this 2 or 3 parastatals that can be matched. You look at the departmental rationalization. You look at the resources. You look at the personnel. You look at the, in terms of resource wastage, the resource application, and other issues. Then you ask yourself, in each of the recommendations, have those things been put down before the implementation within 12 years? These are fundamental challenges.
That's right.
And if they are not in place, I doubt if 12 weeks will be responsible. And another important challenge, which I believe, is that the committee is a national committee. It has to liaise with different agencies responsible, either for scrapping
and the rest of them.
And that means if the committee leaves the aspect of implementation to those organizations, there will be conflict in terms of who merge who, in what respect, in what terms, which laws are there. If you look also at most of them are established by acts of National Assembly. Some require abrogation, some require amendment, some require even outright repeal and reenactment.
That's right.
Then one asks himself, is within 12 weeks, will you have 161 laws that are clearly read, understood, regurgitated, taking interest of every aspect of the service and the interest of the various organizations to match, to be scrapped, to be rationalized, to be reversed to department? These are the issues.
Quite fundamental questions that require answers. But I understand we have to take a break. In case you're just joining us, the program is Daily Politics. We'll take a break. When we return, the conversation continues. Stay with us. Thank you very much for staying with us on Daily Politics. You can do well by following us across our social platforms. You can also watch us live on YouTube. And back in the studio with Professor Hussein Tukur, and together we'll be looking at the implementation, that is the pros and cons of the implementation of the Orosanye report on rationalization and restructuring of the public service. Before the break, you were talking about some of the concerns, from the legal concerns to the restructuring concerns and all of that have to do with this. But before then, I mean, well, even though I also need to ask this question, a number of people are worried whether this decision was done out of, the genuine desire to, rationalize or restructure the civil service, or it is just a product of political expediency. Where do you place it?
Well, there has been concern for rationalization right from the inauguration of democracy in 1999. And there was some effort between 1999 to 2007, where we have financial sector reform. And that the reforms were not logical. We also have some reforms in terms of restructuring of the civil service. Such reform will have continued up to today. And the result will have been marvelous in terms of efficiency, in terms of administration and service delivery. And therefore, with that hindsight, one cannot just conclude that it was on the basis of politics that this implementation is going. No.
Yeah, looking at the parameters you listed earlier, the need to set all of these machineries in place for effective implementation, especially the legal aspect of it, which is quite fundamental. We've seen a number of constitutional amendments that took place, and how up to date they are yet to be implemented because of the challenges of getting the concurrence from the state. So how do we think, that this can be done so easily?
there is no easy way to it. Amending the constitution is a matter of the whole nation. It's not like an enactment of law at the state level, which is the concern of the State House of Assembly. At the federal level, the concern of the two chambers. A constitutional amendment has a long process. Therefore, it requires a long gestation period. It's like a ratification of international treaties. Countries are left on their own to decide when to ratify. And therefore, it's a number threshold that makes it enforceable that is important in the case of international treaty. Whereas in the case of constitutional amendment, it requires 2/3 of the State House of Assembly, which is very difficult to obtain. I think in the previous constitutional amendment, we only have between, I think, 10 to 18 sections that have been having concurrence, up to 24, which can now be part of the constitution and enforceable. But if you look at the number of parastatals we have, which were to be about 200 to be merged, to be scrapped, and also to be some of the department to be relocated. That means you require different aspects of amendment. An amendment in respect of those who are to become department is outright scrapping of the law, meaning that the National Assembly will have to debate on it and then to take a position. Then in terms of amendment, you just can't suggest an amendment and then the two chambers will sit down without recourse to those aspects, their rationale, and then to say we have amended those laws. And therefore, some of the laws require public hearing. Therefore, there is need for that to allow Nigerians also to air their views. To express their view. It's not the fact that a committee set up, the government has made a recommendation, and a white paper has come, which under the military you just implement. It requires also Nigerians' position. Endorsement. Yes, it also requires professional aspect. Those who have the grasp and the practitioners will also to have some recommendation in terms of whether the law, how the law should be amended, how the structure should be matched, what is the cause of ensuring efficiency and so on. And therefore, if you look at all those things, that means it will take a very long time in order to amend those laws and to make them effective.
Right. You were talking about trust deficit earlier and the need to, make Nigerians have confidence in all of these processes and even the driving force behind these reforms. There has been also concerns around this current administration coming up with this, rather implementing this position or this report. It is the same administration that, in history, has the highest number of ministerial appointments, over bloated ministerial appointments, over 50, I think 51 thereabout ministries. And it is the same government that has also unbundled some of the ministries, expanding them, to make them have, some new ones, create some new ones, and so on and so on. Here we are talking about merging, scrapping, and even subsuming some of them. How would you reconcile, these positions?
Well, it is the duty of the government to reconcile that position. But what one will say is that once you are expanding, that means you are increasing the resource allocation. And then you are increasing responsibilities. And that means also you are increasing complexity in terms of policy implementation, in terms of policy monitoring, and so on and so forth. That is a fact. But the important aspect which government also always emphasize is cutting cost and wastages. Now, if you have an expanded executive council and you have a profligate National Assembly that doesn't concern about either to reduce costs, but are concerned
rather increasing
costs, and then on the other hand, you are concerned about rationalization, restructuring in order to cut costs, one will ask, what is the rationale? That one aspect, there is need for cost reduction, wastage reduction. On the other aspect, there is not. And you may ask also the question, how much cost will you reduce in terms of resource allocation, maybe budgetary allocation? Now, in 2012, after the submission report, we understood that the reduction in terms of cost is not up to 1 trillion naira. But today, we do not know even the cost that will be reduced and where the saving will go. It is fundamental to know that saving is not a value unless there is need to use the saving in terms of capital stock or reinvestment in the economy. So this is
like perhaps we are having in the petroleum sector now,
Yes.
with the removal of subsidy.
Yes,
Trillions of naira
Yes.
were said to have been saved.
Yes.
But yet nobody can account for where these monies are going into.
Yes, the controversy is there. We are told now that the saving goes to the state, and we have seen increase. But is there any
Value.
tangible result that majority of Nigerians can say, yes, we are happy as an issue? Secondly, we used to hear that petroleum subsidy has not been provided in the budget, so it may not be implemented, which means it's the concern of the federal government. Now that means if you remove subsidy, the surplus goes to who? To the federal government, because it was in the budget. Now in terms of that, then what is the federal doing to ensure that there is dividend for the removal of subsidies? This is another fundamental question which we cannot answer now.
And we're beginning to see the reaction.
Yes. And then you ask yourself, with this hardship, one will ask, is there any benefit in terms of removal? Because its removal has direct link with
the cost of living.
Then if there is saving, where do the saving goes in order to
alleviate the suffering?
This is a fundamental question that the common man in the street normally asks.
That's right.
And if he doesn't get an answer, he definitely concludes there is no benefit in removing the subsidy.
Right, okay, back to the civil service, for instance, and the reasons behind the recommendations by the Orosanye. Yes, agreed, a number of people will tell you that there have been overlapping functions of these ministries, departments and agencies, which is obvious. And looking at even those that are to be merged, you could see, for instance, the agencies started with the responsibility of fighting corruption. You have the ICPC, you have the EFCC, and so on and so forth. And then in other areas, you also find agencies doing almost the same thing. Now, is it about the size? I mean, or the structure, or the human factor? Because fundamentally, some will say it is because of how we manage them, the corruption involved in it and all of that. Otherwise, it is not about the size, looking at what is obtainable elsewhere. Nigeria's civil service put together, including those at the states and the local level, are not up to 5% of the total population. In some countries like the United States, you have up to 17%. In Europe, for instance, you have up to 20% of the population as a workforce. So where was the problem? Is it about efficiency, or it's about how we manage these agencies?
It's not only about the efficiency, the human factor, it's about all other factors.
Okay.
If you trace the development of agencies, parastatals, and commission in Nigeria, you realize that there are serious duplication, overlapping function, and then you also see in terms of employment, number of personnel, there is redundancy almost everywhere. And if you look at civil service reform, right from the 70s up to the main reoccurring issue was redundancy, then duplication of functions and responsibilities. And when you look at the civil service today, you find that there are overlapping functions, there are wastages in terms of resources, and there are wastage in terms of even manpower. And therefore you ask yourself, is it necessary for rationalization or not? Therefore it is necessary. Take for instance, let's even forget about that are to be rationalized, and let's look at other functions and responsibilities, and those that are not included. Let's take for instance the small scale small, medium enterprises.
Right, medium.
About 8 to 9 ministries have departments like that. And they perform one or two functions, including the Central Bank of Nigeria. Then you may well ask, can't we rationalize those ones into functions, responsibilities, rather than overcrowding resources?
Making them to stand alone.
Take agricultural institutions also. Not only research institutes, but agricultural institutions that are supposed to deliver service. How many of them? How far are they spread? Then you look at those ones, then it's definite that there is need for restructuring and restabilization. But one important aspect is the human factor.
That's right.
Nigeria, let me say clearly, you know, I know, and every Nigerian know that corruption is the business. Is the factor responsible for all these things.
That's right.
Political corruption, you may define it the way you like, but politicians, whatever decision they take, sometimes is imbued with personal interest rather than national patriotic interest.
That's right.
And these are the issues that create the proliferation of those and the duplication of responsibility in terms of efficiency, in terms of effectiveness of the system. And that if you do not address those issues of rationalization in terms of wastage cutting, in terms of responsibilities, rationalizing responsibility, in terms of structure, in terms of ensuring efficiency in service delivery and creating key performance indicators, monitoring, then it will continue to a wastage. And therefore will be circulating in one position. If you take the history of Nigeria right from the 70s, see agency being created, agency restructured, agency merge and demerge. You now understand exactly that the problem will continue unless we address them squarely and fundamentally. And this also takes you back, for instance, to have a clear elucidation of this. Now, during Orosanye, all debts were what?
Were wiped.
After him. And today was the debt.
Piled up, beyond even...
Take also another responsibility and do the same. Successive government that will come will abandon the rationale behind and do whatever they do. If Nigeria's direction and leadership has that tendency, then you may well ask, when will the problem be solved?
Okay, because looking at this, it means that perhaps we might not be able to see the end of this problem. Looking at the key actors, these key actors who are responsible for the creation of all of this proliferation of all of these agencies for their own selfish interests, would they free, or would they fold their arms and allow these things to work? Do we even have, or the leadership has, the political will to stand on its feet and ensure that these things are done correctly?
So if you are talking about political will in terms of those in government, that's a different question. If you are talking about political will in terms of national leadership, then I will say no. And those who lead as a national leadership, those are the one you find in industries, you find the one in public sector and other sectors of the economy. Therefore, if our direction, our focus is that we do not have the will, commitment and determination to do the right thing at all times, then definitely there will be no way out.
So it could be, but because the reason why I asked this question is that it's one thing to initiate the move or to implement the report. It's another to also be able to stand firm and ensure that it is implemented. Certainly there would be, struggles, to thwart, if you like, or to prostrate the arrangement and so on. And this is what we are seeing happening, manifesting in other sectors. But then again, another major concern has to do with the impact in terms of how it's going to affect the workforce. Even though the government is saying that there could be no job losses, but even the report itself, clearly indicates that a number of appointments, if you like, have to go. At the last count, some are talking about 100 appointments across the MDAs will be lost. How would you quantify if the government is able to implement the job losses now, especially now looking at the number of unemployment in the country?
We take government by its words. The Minister of Information clearly indicated there will be no
job losses.
That should not be taken for granted because it's the position of government. But you ask yourself, an organization that have, let's assume 2,000 staff, and then you add 1,000 from a merger, or 2,000 or 3,000, you will ask yourself, having scrapped the department, what is the position in terms of redundancy and efficiency of those in that organization that they are going to? The question is, what is the best thing? Is it rationalization or redundancy?
You have an option.
So if government is not interested in rationalization, then it is interested in redundancy. And then redundancy means wastage.
Wastages.
And that's the issue. Now, another important issue which you raise is that the efficiency aspect of
the outcome expected.
The outcome expected. That relies heavily on the fact that the experience in Nigerian government, in all tiers of government, is that monitoring of responsibility and assignment are not just like it, they are taken for granted. And therefore, every sector, every ministry is regarded as a silo. So someone is there responsible, but determines how, when to deliver service, and there is no recourse to the authority that performance is low or performance is high, and there is need for appreciation.
Accountability.
Yes. And for that reason, it appears to me that the power of discretion is what we have in all agencies, that we decide what to do rather than what the law says we should do. And if we do not go back to what government is about, these are the responsibility you are there to do them, not to create new ones and serve yourself, then there will be no way out. For instance, an agency is given a mandate and this is the mandate, then do implement the mandate. Don't bring other things when you are yet to implement the mandate, and is every day accommodated at the Federal Executive Council and approved, and it will be a distraction to those agencies and organizations. Then definitely you will one day wake up and find that an agency or a commission is no longer implementing its mandate, but the interests of people that have been there in terms of leadership have introduced new things that now forms the mandate of the organization rather than the original mandate.
Right. Okay, the issues are very much, and time is not on our side. I would have wanted to ask, perhaps very quickly, if you can tell how, what needs to be done to get it right now that the government has taken the bull by the horn.
It is a very important thing to say that the government has taken the bull by, and it may be the first time, and the government has given a time frame within which we implemented. That is 12 weeks, which is about 3 months.
That's right.
I believe there is need a very serious hard work in terms of strategy of implementation, mechanism in implementation, collaboration with all those responsible and those that will be involved in the rationalization. That's the only thing that will make it successful. Not a higher power committee, rather than this nitty-gritty.
Thank you very much, Professor Hussein Tukur. for talking to us on Daily Politics. We appreciate your informed perspectives.
Thank you very much.
And viewers, that's a wrap on today's package. We sincerely hope you found the conversation engaging and informative. And be sure to join Daily Politics Live on weekdays, and of course on Fridays, where we open the lines for you to comment on national issues. Once again, I'm Shafiu Suleiman, thanking you for investing your time with us.